This evening, let's explore perfectionism, anger, and meditation. This is Lama Chikme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. Welcome to Meditate Like a Jedi. This is the Lama you are looking for. This evening, we could chant and meditate and enjoy a lesson or two, but first, if you love Star Wars, and you wish to meditate as profoundly as Rey Skywalker and Ajahn Kloss under the guidance of General Leia Organa, be sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell. If at any point this evening you have a question, don't be shy. Simply type your question in great detail in the chat window on the right-hand side of the screen. What's that? You say you're watching a replay and you can't find the chat screen? Well, of course you can't. If you're watching a replay, you'll want to type your question in the comment area below the video. So, OBS, which is my streaming software, crashed during the opening. So this is sort of a slapdash trying to pick up the pieces. So let's sally forth. D on Reddit asked, can you help me to figure out the root cause of my intense anger during meditation? D continued, when I was meditating today, there were a few construction sounds echoing around the neighborhood. It made me mildly angry. By the time my guided session was coming to an end, my mother's yoga class started, which made me even more angry, to the point where my hands started twitching a bit. So we're going to take a break right there. I've had numerous teachers from every sect. And once one teacher from the Theravadan sect was leading a retreat in Joshua Tree. And the retreat center had seen better days. It was a cinder block building, and a breeze blew in through an open window, and it caused the broken blades of a fan to spin, and they made a screeching sort of a sound. And some students really took umbrage with that, and they spoke up in the middle of meditation and asked the teacher to do something about it. And he said, listen, if that sound bothers you, it's because you're not practicing mindfulness. You're practicing concentration. Allow me to elaborate. Consider, if you will, a Waterford crystal flute, a champagne flute. If you drop it on a hardwood floor, it's going to shatter. Concentration is the same way. It's a product of our rigidity and our controlling tendencies, and it shatters easily. And when it does, we experience rage in some form or another. The opposite of rigidity is flexibility. The opposite of being controlling is being laid back. And the opposite of concentration is mindfulness. That we practice vulnerably, passively, viscerally, and spontaneously. And it's like a big fluffy pillow. You can drop that on a hardwood floor and it's just fine. So when the surrounding sounds disturb us, it's because we are stuck in concentration. We're trying to listen to a specific script. We're trying to listen, focus on, a visualization, or focus on our breath. In mindfulness, we don't focus on our breath. We will coordinate certain contemplative slogans with our breath. That is completely different. Now, there is an exception to that rule, and that is if there's a sound that just triggers you no matter what, then it's not indicative of your meditation. That's something completely different. I never respond well to the sound of someone dragging their fingernails across a chalkboard, or the sound of someone blasting music with lyrics. Lyrics play havoc with my brain damage, and so that's completely different. Let's continue with the question and see where it leads us. And I think the person's name began with the letter D. So D continued. I wanted to shout as loudly as possible and kick and break stuff and make a scene. When my session ended, I punched my bed as hard as possible. I think the reason for this is because I've had very good meditation sessions before, and I expect my session to always go perfectly where I am in peace. But this session was not going up to the mark, and it made me immensely angry. So it's great to say I've noticed this and I want to prevent it in the future. But it sounds like what D's doing, with the best of intentions, he's making the newbie mistake of going into story. I don't recommend doing that. So usually it happens with two things. There's a problem, someone's looking for a reason, they guess a reason, and then they tell a story to justify that reason. And whether they know it or not, doing so makes them grab onto that story even tighter. And it reduces the likelihood of them being open to information that contradicts their assumptions. Let's continue. D continues. Also, I wasn't able to focus on my breath properly. I also get angry at that and sort of in a mocking fashion force my breath hard as if I'm telling myself, there, you don't want to let go control of your breath? There, take that, control it as much as you want. Happy now? Yep, I think someone's having a temper tantrum. So it's a mistake to try to scold various mechanisms of our mind. And this is an important part. Think of your mind as like a kitty cat. Sometimes your mind is like a kitty cat on the carpet, snoozing mid-morning in a sunbeam. Other times, your mind is like kitty cat at midnight with its pupils dilated, and it has the zoomies, and it's picking fights with other cats, and it's chipping on the etagere for the express purpose of finding what you like the most and knocking it off the shelf. In other words, sometimes our mind is passive. Other times our mind is active. If you have a good meditation teacher, he will give you techniques to use when your mind is spontaneously passive, and other techniques to use when your mind is spontaneously active. So rather than trying to treat our mind like a television set that we can change the channel on, I'm using an old 1970s television set for that. Instead of trying to control, let's just notice what our mind is spontaneously doing and use techniques to help us to profit from that spontaneous state. That's the Buddha's way. Let's continue. Another thing I've noticed is I do the things which are good for me at the worst possible time. I knew the timings of the construction and the classes, but I kept browsing Reddit, comparing products and reviews, seeing this question, reading the comments of that question, this and that. And it turns out that even though I knew the worst possible time of the day to meditate, I meditated at exactly that time. Is there some sort of subconscious thing where it makes me do things at a bad time? Or is this a coincidence where I procrastinate and it just ends up being a bad time? So there is a teaching or a story that became popular in the 80s about self-sabotage. And it makes a good story, but it isn't an empowering story. And there's no real way to test it out using the scientific method. There are some psychologists who are really into neuroscience, and they really want to use things that they really work with science. And there's other psychologists who remember that PhD stands for Doctor of Psychology, and Doctor of Philosophy. And they just tell stories. And those stories might make people feel like they've got a good beat on things, but it doesn't make their lives any better. It doesn't fix old problems. It doesn't prevent new problems. It doesn't help them cope with what they're feeling right now. It is what us big boys like to call a distraction. When you get the chance to read Dr. Sam Harris's book, Free Will, you will stop asking questions like this. Both contemporary physicists and neuroscientists agree there is no free will, only the illusion of free will. If I may brutalize an ancient aphorism, the best laid plans of mice and men often turn to ash. The most difficult thing in meditation is not the actual techniques, assuming you have a good teacher. The most difficult thing to do is to forge the habit of meditating approximately once every 12 hours. That's why I tell my new students to start off at just 5 minutes twice a day. 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the evening. The first week, what you're conquering is not your ignorance or your ego. It's just forging a new habit. When we experience a loss of executive control, that is one of the symptoms of ADHD, we're basically just chasing the dopamine. People who have ADHD typically have levels of dopamine that are below normal. And so their lives are spent basically chasing the dopamine. That makes them very spontaneous, and they don't do well with schedules. The type of brain damage that creates the symptom set we call ADHD is not a question of willpower. It's about neural structure. Someone tells you, well, you just need to concentrate. Well, they just need to shut the fuck up because they don't know what they're talking about. Angels and messengers of grace protect us from people who speak aloud of that which they know nothing of. Our bodies are very complex. Our brains are very complex. And this thing we call a mind is remarkably complex. We have many needs. Sleep and food and fresh air and sunshine and exercise and nurturing relationships and fulfilling work. All these things are needs. when we get them, how often we get them, how much we get when we get them. All these factors add up. And if you feel like your ADHD-like symptoms are beating you about the head and shoulders, then go to the PCRM Find a Doctor page on Google. And PCRM, I guess it'd be Papa, Charlie, Romeo, Mike, PCRM. And you can find an MD who practices psychiatry that is informed by the latest studies of nutrition. Because sometimes you want to work with someone who has a more holistic view of legitimate science than who just makes money issuing procedures and pills. Find someone who can help you. In the meantime, you're in for an adventure. Learning how to cope with executive dysfunction, neurodivergence, and the like is an adventure. And if someone tells you it isn't, they don't know jack. D continues. I think I have a few biases and prejudices in my mind, especially with my family. Could this be the reason for my anger? So, you're asking the wrong question, D. It's good that you don't want to be an angry oaf, a screaming behemoth. But we all have cognitive biases. We all have logical fallacies. We all have quote-unquote stinking thinking. The question is not, why do I feel what I feel? The question is twofold. Right now, in this moment, what am I feeling? Number two, what am I going to do with what I feel? That's why it's crucial to learn how to perform the 4 contemplations, as well as the dance of mindfulness and meditation. I teach these in every live stream. Everything I teach is free. Hang out with me, and you'll learn that tonight. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Those 5 techniques are instrumental to helping us to deal with whatever we experience, whenever we experience it. The other night, I awoke with a horrible nightmare. I was in a deep sleep. I guess not deep sleep if you're dreaming, but it was a very primal fear of being eaten by a real creature. And boy, I just skedaddled out of bed, walked to the living room, sat on the couch so my sinuses could drain, and just waited. I had to wait it seemed like a long time, probably several seconds, until my brain was able to wake up enough to start practicing. But then once I did, I was able to deal with the fear rather quickly. But I had to wait for my brain to come back online, or at least my mind to come back online. So even after decades of full-time practice, we are still at the mercy of the physiological processes that support the electrical and chemical phenomena we describe as a mind. By the way, there are those who insist that awareness is the byproduct of neurological complexity. Tough to feel superior if that's all that's going on. Let's continue. D wrote, all of this unpleasant anger is making me resist meditation even more. It makes me want to not do it, since I know I'll get angry unless I'm in a perfect mood and place and time. And that's what we call a gilded cage. Unless all my circumstances are right and all my emotions are right, I'm in torment. I'm only good. I'm only able to live in certain sphere. And that's a very difficult way to live. One of the benefits of an effective meditative system is that it increases our resilience. We can't control all the variable factors in the world around us, and it helps us. So it's necessary to embrace a system that will increase our resourcefulness so we can cope. D concludes, I'm male, 17, and any advice will be helpful for me. Thank you in advance. So that right there is really important. A teenager, by definition, is in a situation where their prefrontal cortex is not yet fully formed. So the odds of them exhibiting ideal executive function are very poor. Number two, speaking as a male, a cis male, testosterone swings in puberty are notorious. They are very difficult. So the key, once again, is to learn a system and then apply the system rigorously to cope with whatever comes up. It's difficult, but it's doable. Let's take care of housekeeping for less than a minute. Every 12 hours a broadcast. Oh, wait! Ha ha ha! I forgot to read the essay that I wrote 6 days ago on this subject. Let's go back and do that. Ever met a perfectionist? How joyful were they? How peaceful. It is almost as if perfectionism was an antidote to peace and joy. Bring perfectionism into meditation and you'll feel cranky and miserable. When we're seated cross-legged, striving to focus completely on our breath, that is concentration. In the 81 poems of the Tao Te Ching, we learn of yin and yang, two of the attributes that define a person on the path of yang or patriarchy are the tendencies to be rigid and controlling. Although aiding and concentration are antithetical to the path of yin, which, although aiding and concentration are antithetical to the path of yin, or matriarchy. Two marks of an individual traversing yin's path is being flexible and laid back. This is the only path that leads to joy and peace. What if the folded blanket upon which you sit could be likened to a theater? When we're being controlling, it's like we're trying to be the producer, director, or playwright. When we're being flexible and laid back, it's like we're happy to simply be an audience member, content to simply notice our perceptions, emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. We don't even have to pin them down with any label other than the pronoun this. About once every 12 hours or so, you could sit with a sustainable posture while mentally reciting "notice this" during each enthusiastic inhalation and relaxing during each tranquilizing exhalation. In no time at all, you could meditate like a Jedi. There. Now, less than 60 seconds of housekeeping. Every 12 hours, I broadcast a live meditation class without any ads. With your help, this channel could support the next generation of nuns, monks, yogis, lamas, and even brick-and-mortar meditation centers, each replete with a resident teacher and their apprentice. If this speaks to you and you'd like to help out, even for as little as the cost of 1 cup of coffee a month, simply use your camera on your phone to capture the QR code. Or if you're old school, click one of the links in the description area below the video. There is a donation link for YouTube or Patreon and one for PayPal. So the iteration of this evening's Kind Gaze practice text is Mother Tantra. Which sounds like a yogic cuss, doesn't it? We're going to begin with silent meditation for the purpose of slicing through the duality of dread and desire. This is known by many names. Some call it Zen or Chan or Dhyana or Mahasandhi. Some call it Ati Yoga, some call it Sutra Mahamudra, some call it Trekcho Dzogchen. We're going to start off with one verbal preliminary practice. Kind Lama, please come to the horizontal wheel behind this navel. How are you kinder than all Buddhas because you're actively present in my life? Kind Lama, please come to the horizontal wheel behind this navel. How are you kinder than all Buddhas because you're actively present in my life? One more time. Kind Lama, please come to the horizontal wheel behind this navel. How are you kinder than all Buddhas because you're actively present in my life? Now the silent version is simple. During the in-breath, we mentally recite Lama come. And during the exhalation, we mentally recite to navel. So we've already mentioned. So the navel wheel is about the size of your thumbnail. It's horizontal. It's behind your navel and about a thumb's width before your spine. Do you have to visualize it? No. Do you have to feel for it? No. Simply hearing these words is enough information for the supercomputer between your ears. So let's play with Lama come to navel for about 3 or 4 breaths. The essence of mindfulness. Let's come to the dance of mindfulness and meditation. During our in-breath, we perform mindfulness with the words, feeling this. During our exhalation, we practice meditation with the phrase or the word, relaxing. Let your body determine the duration and depth of your breathing. I'm going to take a moment to edit, because sometimes that's just how life works. So let's start with our circumstances, that the monosyllabic synonym for circumstances is Lot. And we're going to ask the rhetorical question, how could Lot feel stressful? Let's play with this for a few minutes. Now we're going to train in compassion. All beings lots, may I soothe. Let's train in impermanence. How could lots never last? Let us train in letting go. How could lots not be me? Lama, come to navel. And let's just hang out with the dance of mindfulness and meditation. Feeling this relaxing. Let's turn our attention now to our body. The monosyllabic synonym for body is form. How could form feel stressful? All beings' forms, may I soothe. How could form never last? How could form not be me? Lama, come to navel. Feeling this relaxing. Our relationships are built on communication, both verbal and nonverbal. The monosyllabic synonym for communication, both literally and figuratively, is speech. How could speech feel stressful? All beings' speech, may I soothe. How could speech never last? How could speech not be me? Feeling this relaxing. How could mind feel stressful? All beings' minds, may I soothe. How could mind never last? could mind not be me? And now it's time for chanting to train in love and letting go. May I yearn to liberate all beings through mastery of the Eightfold Path, with each recitation of the six syllable mantra. May I rely upon the Buddha's example, instructions, and students, with each recitation of the six syllable mantra. Kind Lama, may I regret the harm I've done and resolve to do the kind thing, with each recitation of the six syllable mantra. May I enthusiastically share with all beings all my wisdom, love, health, and possessions, with each recitation of the six syllable mantra. Kind Lama, please blend with this crown mind with each recitation of the six syllable mantra, for our minds are one in their empty nature. Kind Lama, please blend with this crown mind with each recitation of the six syllable mantra, for our minds are one in their empty nature. Kind Lama, please blend with this crown mind with each recitation of the six syllable mantra, for our minds are one in their empty nature. let us now leapfrog over confusions, clinging, and competition with mantra meditation. This too is known by many names, such as mantra yoga, or maha yoga, or tantra mahamudra, or tokal dzogchen. Let's begin with mantra's meaning. Om I invoke the wish-fulfilling Mani, jewel of love, and the purifying Pei-me lotus of letting go, supplicating with whom may love and letting go be mastered by all. So let us consider for a moment this individual on the screen. Smile on his face. He has 4 arms that remind us of the 4 immeasurables of compassion, love, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. Above his head, his teacher hovers. This individual is known in Sanskrit as Avalokiteshvara, in Tibet as Chenrezig, and in English either literally as kind eyes, or figuratively, he who kindly gazes. Those who are prone to being rigid and fearful and controlling will view this entity as like a god or a goddess or a mommy or a daddy or a Santa Claus. Those who tend to be, or who choose to be, flexible and loving and laid back will view this individual as an archetype of enlightened compassion, whose iconography reminds us of the 8 simile figures of speech that are integral to mantra meditation. For our first 4 exercises, our first 4 contemplations, let's leapfrog over our clinging tendencies by contemplating letting go's right view of reality. So here's how to make the most out of mantra meditation. You gotta breathe in, or you'll turn blue, tip over, wiggle funny, and frighten the dog. So if you're going to breathe in anyway, you might as well recite a rhetorical question. When it's time to breathe out, whisper the mantra while physically relaxing as best you can. Now let's look at let us explore the subject covered or touched upon by the rhetorical question in a more elaborate sense. How is it that as we breathe in, we can observe our circumstance, and yet, as we physically relax during the mantra recitation, this exact same circumstance could feel as if it was as non-graspable as the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn. It could feel as if it was as non-graspable as a Buddha's mythical paradise or pure land or vati comprised only of light. How is it that as we breathe in, we can feel our bodies, and yet as we relax into our exhalation, these exact same bodies could feel as if they were as non-graspable as a vast empty void. They could feel as if they were as non-graspable as a Buddha's mythical body of light known as a Sambhogakaya or a Devi or a Yadam. How is it that as we inhale, we can hear communication quite distinctly, and yet as we exhale, the same communication could feel as if it was as non-graspable as a mantra comprised only of lights? As we breathe in, we can clearly observe mind's functions of perception, emotion, intention, reason, recall, and imagination. And yet as we relax into our exhalation, mind could feel as if it was as non-graspable as a one-syllable mantra, a seed mantra, a bija, comprised only of light. We're going to shift gears now. We're going to leapfrog over our competitive tendencies by contemplating love's right wishes. As we chant the mantra, you could feel as if diamond rays were emitting from a thumbnail-sized horizontal six-syllable mantra rosary at our crown. Lavishing all circumstances, bodies, communication, and minds, with good fortune, health, love, and wisdom centered and spontaneous. You know, since we're talking about a rosary, it probably makes sense for me to actually put an image of a rosary, just so you get the basic idea. Let's see, what are we looking for? All right, let's make sure the display is synchronized. As we chant the mantra, could feel the septamen rays were emitting from Etham Nilsa Torres Alto Six Syllable Mantra Rosary at our crown. Now let's see here. Lavishing all circumstances, bodies, communication, and minds, with good fortune, health, love, and wisdom centered and spontaneous. So our job now is not to visualize or believe or even emote. So by playing with these words, we will be leading our intention, whether we want to or not. So let us practice in such a manner. Let us intend to lavish all circumstances of all beings with the safety and good fortune of a Buddha's mythic paradise or pure land or vati. Let us lovingly wish that all bodies of all beings are now as healthy as a Buddha's mythical as body of light or yadam. I'm going to hit delete. I'm going to hit enter. Let's see. Here we go. Let's hit home and reveal. And let's, ooh, wow, that was exciting. Let's fix that bad boy. Okay, that'll work surprisingly well. Let us wish that all communication is as loving as a Buddha's communication, symbolized by his mantra. Let us lovingly wish that all minds of all beings are as wise as a Buddha's mind, symbolized by a one-syllable mantra, a seed mantra, or a bija mantra. We've explored awareness and letting go, as well as love and letting go. And now it's time for bliss and letting go. We're going to begin by contemplating the dance of impermanence, interdependence, and non-graspability. If you have any questions, be sure to type your questions specifically, or type your specific questions, your detailed questions, in the chat window. All beings melt into worlds. All worlds melt into earthlings. Earthlings melt into earth. Earth now melts into neighbors. Neighbors melt into here. Here now melts into form. Form now melts into speech. Speech now melts into mind. Crown mind melts into void. Let's conclude with some chanting. May all the harm of martyrs, non-humans, and so forth be overcome. May they become non-existent. May they be pacified. May they be thoroughly pacified. May all kinds of interferences, diseases, and possessing spirits be pacified. May all be separated from unfavorable conditions, and may all experience favorable conditions and everything excellent. Through this fortune may there be at this time happiness and health. May all my speech forms and lots be as wise, loving, healthy, and fortunate as kind gazes bija mantra yidam and vati of Lord. May all beings like Kange's master being flexible, loving, laid back, egalitarian, cooperative, and kind. May all beings practice of kind communication, conduct, and calmness, flow spontaneous and uncontrived. May all beings like kind gaze master the Eightfold Path as well as liberate all others. May each being take auspicious rebirth, master the Buddha's path, and then help all others do likewise. May everyone be free from stress, may everyone be happy. May no one be separated from the happiness. May everyone have balance from the tyranny of hating, craving, and clinging free. If you feel I have earned it, type something in the chat window, give this live stream a thumbs up, and share it on social media. In approximately 10.5 hours, we could return to explore Buddha's Serenity and Joy discourse, as well as chant and meditate some more. Until then, may you and yours be happy and healthy. And if you are as geeky as me, this is the way.